Hello, Psych 101 students. Welcome to Learning Objective 2, 5 Interconnected Domains. When I was introducing the study guide, I pointed out that there's only a couple of pages you need to know for this learning objective, so this should not be a very long video. First of all, I want to point out that sometimes I leave slides. I've left slides in here that you actually don't need to know. They will pop up here and there. This is one of them, so I'm not going to cover it because we used to cover it, but it's no longer in the study guide, so you don't need to know about Wilhelm Wundt. Although it is kind of interesting, but I'm going to just stick to covering what you absolutely need to know. So I'm going to move on from this. You can put a big X through it if you want. And we'll get to the 5 domains of psychology. They are listed here: biological, cognitive, developmental, social and personality, and then mental and physical health. Let me move right on to the next slide where we have a picture of the 5 domains being interconnected. So I'm just going to, briefly talk about each of these domains. And we will be certainly studying each of these domains. Starting with, at the top, we have biological, which, this is the study of, the biological systems that affect our thinking and behavior. So we will be looking at this in module 2, in the next module, when we study biological psychology and consciousness. And we'll look at things like different brain areas and the whole nervous system of the body, because it certainly affects our behavior and our thinking. We'll look at neurons that make up the nervous system and how they work. We'll talk about things like the hormones and our fight or flight response and things like that, because they are all biologically based. So we have a whole module that this specializes in looking at this area of biology. Moving on to cognitive, we'll be looking at that later in module 5 when we study memory, thinking, and intelligence. The cognitive area is just about any kind of mental processing you do, mental activities that will obviously affect your thinking and behavior, and as well as your feelings and actions, as this is here. But so the cognitive area does include things like decision making and problem solving and memory and language and anything that we use our minds for. The developmental area is all about how we change throughout our lifespan, from all the way from conception up till your death. And what are the expected changes at each age stage. We'll be looking at that in module 3 when we look at human development, motivation, and emotions. The social and personality area is all about, or domain, I should say, is all about how others affect your thinking and behaviors. We often think or behave differently in the presence of others versus when we're alone. And also the personality is kind of from inwards, like how does your temperament and your various personality traits affect your thinking and your behaviors. We'll look at that in module 6 when we study social psychology, self, and personality. And then we have the domain of mental and physical health. And how do various mental or physical illnesses affect our thinking and behavior. We'll be looking at this, or at least the mental side of this, when we look at psychological disorders and psychological treatments in module 7. And what they're pointing out here is that they've connected all the circles because there are interdisciplinary approaches that combine 2 or more of these domains. And And they've actually tried to draw this in a certain way to represent how much overlap there is between different domains. So you can see, for instance, if you look at the cognitive domain, it has a heavy overlap with the developmental domain. And this is because there's a whole area called cognitive development. I was trained as a cognitive psychology, but now I primarily teach developmental psychology because a large area of developmental psychology is how our thinking changes from one age to another. And so there is a large overlap in the area of cognitive development. Similarly, let me just combine different circles here. If you look at biology and cognitive, this would lead to the area of cognitive neuroscience. So they look at how changes in the biology of the brain affects your thinking. And then we can combine the biology and the mental and physical health. And we'll see examples of this in the last module, where when we look at various mental illnesses or psychological disorders, we will often look at the possible biological causes of them. What is it that's happened in the brain that causes the mental health problem? If you combine mental and physical health with social and personality, I'll just give you an example here that one personality trait that we'll talk about is conscientiousness. And it turns out that conscientiousness has a huge impact on physical health. People that are more conscientious tend to be healthier because they engage in better habits, and they're less likely to engage in bad habits. People that are higher in conscientiousness tend to live longer than those that are lower. So your personality characteristic is affecting your actual physical health. It can affect your mental health as well, but I won't get into that now. And then finally, combining social and personality and developmental, you see that there's a fair overlap between those two. Not quite as much, but there's a whole area that I teach called social emotional development. So it has to do with the development of how you relate to others and how you think about others, and as well as how your emotions change. So anyways, there are sub disciplines, where when you start combining any two of these, and we'll look at a couple of examples on this next, well, in a couple of slides from now. What we call these combinations are interdisciplinary approaches. You see that term in the middle there. I'm going to move on now. So as it says here, some psychologists take an interdisciplinary approach to the topic by working collaboratively. You'll find that sometimes I stumble over long words. Anyways, with researchers who specialize in topics studied in other domains. And this goes on much more in psychology than it used to occur. People used to stick to their areas. If you were a cognitive psychologist, you only studied thinking and now but over time people saw the wisdom of working with other specialists and combining their areas, and we end up with so many new subdivisions in psychology. Like is what happened with cognitive neuropsychology. There was a movement where the neuroscientists got together with the cognitive psychologists and made this whole new area of study. Let's go on now. Here's a couple of examples. Started to mention this earlier. Just these are from your book. I'm not going to add much to them. Psychologists working across the social, personality, developmental, and cognitive domains, combining 4 domains, have explored why people love the K-pop craze. And then the second example here, psychologists working across mental and physical health, biological, cognitive domains. They combine 3 here, have found that owning a pet improves our well-being. And you often need, to combine specialists because different experts will, they will know things that from their area that are very useful to the problem being studied. When I actually just end up publishing one article, and I worked with social psychologists, and we end up publishing the British Journal of Social Psychology, and it was because they needed somebody that knew about how to measure, cognitive effort and come up with tasks to measure um, how much thinking a person was putting into a task. And so I was invited into that research project because I knew lot more about cognitive psychology than these social psychologists. Um, let's go on here. Oh, by the way, I think never mind. I wasn't sure what slide was coming up, but this is another one of those big X's. So once again, I apologize for it. I've left some slides in that don't belong. But I will tell you, this is the advantage of you watching the video lectures. You learn what you don't need to know. And this is another one you can put the big X through. You won't be tested on what you can do with a degree in psychology. It's not that it's unimportant, or that I wouldn't mind talking about it, but I'm trying to keep these videos to really what you need to know. So that actually wraps up learning objective 2. See you later.